Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. We're hoping this can be a very interesting and interactive session today. We are discussing a little bit more about digital media and the digital media space. I know that this has been your focus as of the last little while as the founder of Easy Edits team. If you can just go ahead and talk a little bit more about how you got started in the digital media space. What do you mean by the digital media space? And tell us a little bit more about your story.
Big time. So it all kind of started back, and I would say even grade three or grade four. I had kind of snuck behind my parents' back and started doing YouTube videos. And of course, they ended up finding out it had to get shut down. But ever since, I just kind of loved doing content creation. So I had started a few other channels at one point. It was a skateboarding channel. And then after that, it turned into a financial literacy channel. And then I made the realization of something with content creation being so prevalent, especially within today's day and age, it's all about competition. So you got to be able to post on a very frequent and consistent basis in order to kind of be up and aligned with the algorithm along with whoever else you're kind of competing with. And the realization that I made is that as one individual who has to worry about not only video editing, but also have to worry about the thumbnails and the SEO and all of that stuff, I ended up thinking to myself, well, what if I provide that same support, but to other content creators? So things weren't really going that well with the financial literacy thing, realized kind of something different there. And ever since we had started kind of doing, you can say, almost like pro bono work in a sense, where it's like we reach out to a few of our colleagues, we're like, let us just do your videos for you. And we got some pretty good feedback, which kind of enticed us to keep taking a step forward with helping other content creators out. And ever since, we haven't really looked back, and that's kind of how we got started. As to the point of your second question, which was what, like, what did you, what was that second question again?
Sorry. What I was asking about the business model that you decided to pursue with Easy Edits, um, and how you sort of got that started.
Big time. So that was really just the kind of starting story, I guess you can say. But then when it comes down to the model itself, we just handle the entire post-production process. So what content creators, all they need to do is just click on record, press upload, and then we take care of literally everything else, from the editing aspect all the way to the posting.
Why did you decide to pursue the digital media space? I mean, of course, you have a passion for it, and you were talking about starting content creation and putting it, enjoying the process of putting together videos and posting them up online. But now we're talking about running and operating a legitimate enterprise. What's the opportunity that you actually see in the content creation space or the digital media space that's led you to pursue this full fledged?
The opportunity is simply, it's been more prevalent in the past 2 years. Ever since we had the COVID shutdowns, people were kind of forced to get locked inside of their house, at least in this side of the world, and people started to pursue personal branding more. They started to pursue their own YouTube channels because it was more or less, hey, I have work to do, but then after that, what am I doing? I can't see my friends, I can't see this, I can't see that. And really just that opportunity is people trying to establish themselves in an online presence more. And in order to do that, things aren't how they were back in the day, where it would just be, hey, let's put up a few infographics and call it a day. No, it's all coming down to video. Whether you are looking at somebody that you used to go to high school with that isn't necessarily doing as much, they're posting videos. Somebody who's doing a lot, they're posting videos too. But when it comes down to that actual post production process, that's where people really are like, wait, what am I supposed to do here? When it comes down to the specific aspects of post production, whether that be the video editing side, people don't really understand the structure of how one should do an effective video. Then you see the SEO aspect. Some people don't even know where to get into that. So that's where the opportunity really lays. If you've got that skill set, you understand how these things work inside and out within the entire process. That's really where the opportunity lies.
Interesting. Now, so for your clients who, let's say, want to start maybe broadcasting vlogs or some sort of a news channel, or want to do interviews or podcasts, whatever it may be, what is the value add in the post production, and what's Easy Edit's role in helping them get to the next level, and what does that look like?
Ultimately, the biggest number one thing would be saving of time. When you look at the post-production process as a whole, you notice that it is a very time-consuming process. And by us handling that post-production process, creators, whether those be podcasters, YouTubers, whatever the case is, that gives them the opportunity to actually focus on their content. Whether it's content ideas, filming more to actually make more, that's really where the big value add is. We're going to save your time. And on top of that, there are a few other things that we do to ensure that our partners are growing rather than remaining stagnant or going on a downfall. But ultimately, it's that saving of time. And with our team, I got to give a big shout out to the Easy Edits team in general. They are extremely competent at what they do. And that helps us to propel our partners forward, and which really, again, helps us with that bottom line of saving time and helping our partners really grow.
Interesting. You talked a little bit about post production and SEO. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with what that means. Can you talk a little bit more about that and why that's important?
Big time. So breaking down first and foremost the post-production process, you got to kind of look at it from a very simplistic perspective where production is you actually producing the content. So it's you filming, it's you making the script, it's you creating an outline, resources, things like that. That's more of the production side. Post-production is when all of that has kind of been done, and post is just kind of meaning what's after, what's next. So that can either look like the editing itself, the thumbnails, the SEO, and even the posting distribution kind of strategies that we kind of have there. On the SEO side, SEO stands for search engine optimization. What this really means in simplistic terms is you're trying to make your content in a way that is going to be enticing for your potential viewers and is also going to be enticing for the platform's algorithms. So those robots that are kind of in the back end, where if you log on to YouTube or another platform, usually that first few videos that you see up, that's because of the algorithm. That those computers that are working in the background have pushed that content up. So when it comes to SEO, we kind of will create titles, descriptions, tags, so that it helps those robots push the content upwards, but also will make it enticing enough for a human being as us to actually click the content and watch the content.
How important is the post-production process with respect to just the production process of actually going out and making the content? So I say that to say, if I was somebody who wanted to go out and venture into the media space and produce some sort of content, how important is the post-production process in relation to actually just producing the content? If I was to just produce content, put it up on YouTube or any other content provider, how much of an effect does the post-production process and what you guys do have an effect on the ability for that video to succeed?
That's an amazing question. I would say in terms of the importance of both of those things, they are exactly equal. They are on a 50-50% basis. Simply just because if you go to end up recording something with a very old phone or a very old camera, we're going to end up getting content that has been recorded with whether that be low quality on the video side or the audio side. And that makes it really hard for us to actually make that content stand out. So when it comes down to that, and we have a very, very hilarious story of one of our past partners who basically would make it like they had this little cooking channel. And it's like they would record it through different angles. And then they would also, the audio was just absolutely terrible. And every single time and time again, we went up to that partner and it's like, listen, we're making our magic happen from the editing side, whether those are like little pop-ups or little effects, things like that. But we really need you to help us out on the production side. Gave a bunch of different suggestions time and time again, but because it wasn't recorded strategically, it was hard for us to really make their content stand out. And that even goes without saying, like, not only just the actual equipment that you're recording with, but do you understand how a video should be structured? Do you understand all 7 segments of how you should actually record your video? Obviously, we will provide that support for our partners, but back to your question, how important are both of those things on a 50-50% basis? You need one for the other, and they really are both kind of they have a very important dynamic between each other.
I'm going to make a little bit of a shift here and talk and ask you a little bit more about the opportunities that you might see for people across the world. Many of our listeners here today are continental Africans coming out all over the continent. You're from Egypt yourself, from what I understand. How much has your relationship with the continent affected your business? And do you think that there are opportunities for people internationally to take advantage of this?
I am a very big believer in there's always opportunities. There are always going to be opportunities, regardless of what space or what industry that may be in. But then it really comes down to asking yourself that question. Am I trying to create opportunities for myself? Or am I just kind of sitting down there and waiting for the opportunities to land in my lap? And of course, this might be it'll depend on the perspective from person to person. But if you're able to create those opportunities for yourself, the opportunities are plentiful, whether it be internationally or whether it be focused on a specific continent, there's always opportunities. Within, I would say, the digital media space, the opportunities are going to keep on going in, whether it be on the film side or whether you look at other aspects of digital media. With how, with the influx of people who are starting to get into the space, we have 8 billion people in this world. There's going to be a big portion of them that are going to start producing video content or just want to establish an online presence. So the opportunities are plentiful, to say the least.
Fair enough. I think that pretty much answers the question. Now the next steps then become, what did you do to sort of bootstrap that early process? What skills did you have that allowed you to then break into the space and really get started with easy edits? Were you working some sort of a job? Did you save money so that you could put up money for certain softwares, or what does that early on process look like when it comes to getting access to capital and getting something like this started?
It's, man, I hear that question and just a big smile comes onto my face, looking at how tough that entire journey has been, to say the least. But I guess the kind of, how did I bootstrap myself to be in this type of position was simply just double dipping. I ended up graduating back in 2020, and I ended up getting into a typical 9-to-5 job, which very quickly started getting miserable about. But as I started creating opportunities for myself within that digital media space, and realized how much potential there actually is, I started double dipping. I don't want to get too much into the details because I could get in trouble with my previous employer, but I think the best way to put it is that 9 to 5, just for the company that I was working for, and then 5 to whether it's 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., even midnight, along with my full-on weekends, those were dedicated to easy edits. And it took a lot of sacrifice, so to speak. And just thinking about all those hard times where it's crazy. But in terms of capital and things of that nature, again, another sacrifice that had to be made where every single paycheck that was coming into from my former employer was getting completely dumped into that. Whether that was even the sacrifices of simply just not having a car, or simply just cutting back on groceries or certain expenses just to kind of funnel in to easy edits, and just our team that's doing amazing work and our partners who really need us. It all really comes down to sacrifice. And it doesn't even go to say that we were one of your typical startups that would start off by going to angel investors and venture capitalists and things of that sort. It kind of just, we've been kind of reliant on ourselves, so to speak. I'm not sure if that quite answers the question at hand, though.
Absolutely. And you talk a lot about your team, you talk a lot about partners. At what point did you realize having a team was important? And did you bring on a team when you were doing your own editing, or was it once you decided to take on new clients? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, so it all started off with when we were doing the financial literacy channel. Of course, at first, for maybe the first year, I was doing all of the post-production process by myself. But of course, in order to scale, I did have to hire myself a team at one point. And ultimately, that is when I realized the importance of having a team, and not just having any type of team, but having a team of superstars, having a team of superstars who truly see the vision long term within the company, and even seeing the long term potential within themselves being within the company. And it's crazy. It's crazy. I really do love it, though. I really do enjoy it, because when you have a team, you're able to establish a different connection with each one. You get to understand what fuels team member A, what fuels team member B, what fuels team member C, what do they like? And you get to kind of know them more on a personal level rather than just more on a professional level. And as funny as this is to say, I'm a very nice guy. I am a very extroverted guy at that as well. So when the team comes in on a daily basis, or whenever their work times are, they don't even feel like they're at work. They just feel like we're all chilling in the same office together. They're like, "Hey, Tamer, like, wow, what did you end up doing with this situation?" Or I'll go up to, for example, Abby, and I'll be like, "Abby, dude, you just got a new motorcycle. Like, let me check this thing out." And he'll send me pictures. He'll tell me about his trips. But the importance of having a team is just it's so important. It's so important. It, where are you,
Now,
essentially,
did
and
you
closely organizing?
did you start with hiring your friends, working with your family? Like, were these people that were locally based around you? How did you go about building a team, and who were the first key pieces that you felt were important in helping you get to where you are today?
Ultimately, what we ended up doing, so we are not the type of company who is going to narrow our criteria for team members in terms of location in particular. We just want to make sure at the end of the day that you're competent at what you do, you have a good attitude, you have all of the values that are within our organization, and it doesn't even matter as to whether you're based in Canada, it doesn't matter whether you're based in Chile or in Nigeria or Japan, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, if you see the long-term vision and you're competent at what you do, you have all of the values that are aligned within our organization, you can come on right in.
As a sort of hiring model, have you decided to look locally or hire friends and family? Where did you go when you realized that you needed to start building a team?
I just use the various resources that are out there for when it comes down to hiring. I feel like the most successful has definitely been LinkedIn, because you're able to reach an international audience. And hey, at the end of the day, who's not on LinkedIn, right? So LinkedIn has been very successful. We have tried other venues as well, but when it comes down to the types of candidates that those other venues attract, I would say LinkedIn is really where our main focus is as of right now. And I get to answer your question, because I know you asked whether to hire locally or family or friends. We kind of strayed away from that. So me personally, I kind of try to keep my family and friends out of things. And then in terms of the local aspect, I've just got a few personal mixed feelings about hiring locally per se. Just the certain attitudes and the certain privileges that people have within North America in particular, it does not align with our organization's values whatsoever. So that's why we kind of shelved that local aspect.
So it sounds like you've decided to go international with your team. And is this one country that you've decided to go to, or is your team sort of spread out around the globe? What's sort of the mentality that you've taken with that?
Literally just internationally, whether that's in Europe, whether that's in Asia, Africa, or South America. Those are where those are where we try to find our new team members. We've had a few team members who have been from the continent of Africa, amazing people. I love them. Same thing with people from Europe. I think we had one person at one point who was from the Czech Republic, another from Georgia, and potentially even Bosnia as well. And then looking on the Asia side of things, we've definitely had a lot of people from more of the Oceanic region, along with people who have been amazing from India, Pakistan, or even like all of these different places. But when it comes down to where we look, it's everywhere except North America.
That's pretty funny. It's like you're taking the lead on actually developing the business and pushing the lead on it, but you've decided to actually look and hire internationally when it comes to actually building up the team. And the cool and interesting thing about the business that you're in is it's an online business. Everything is digital based, it's internet based. So it sort of gives you that flexibility to go ahead and look internationally to scour for talent. Um, I guess before we open up the opportunities for questions from some of our attendees here, I wanted to ask a couple more questions. You talked about early on having a passion for content creation, making videos, posting these videos, um, and turning that and translating that into eventually a legitimate business model. Now, were there any skills that you thought were important? Were there any skills that you felt like you needed to acquire? Were there any skills that you felt were important to acquire as you went along this process? And if so, what would they be? Was it any schooling or programs that you had actually taken? Um, Talk a little bit more about that if you can.
I would say I would narrow it down to three things. The first thing if is experience. If you've already done these things yourself and you've done them time after time after time again, and for a very long duration of time, those kind of give you those skill sets to kind of make that entry, whether that disregarding whatever industry that may be. But doing things yourself in the very beginning and for a very long time is really helpful. You get to take a lot of L's, or I should say losses, and from those losses, you get to learn and you get to grow your experience from that aspect, and you get to learn skills along the way. Experience has definitely been the number one priority. And then the two other things, the second one is simply just being a nice person, being a human being, and interacting with other people as human beings as well. The third thing is operating in peace, unity, and love. That one, as cheesy as it sounds, that one has really been a huge proponent in where we are today and where we were back in the day and where we're going to be in the future as well.
Interesting. Now, are these things that you sort of inherently knew going into the business, or were these sort of habits that were reaffirmed to you as you saw small successes take place?
I would say the last two were definitely things that I believe were innate from the moment where I was growing up until now. But then as time progressed, as you kind of were alluding to, those were reaffirmed and set more in stone in terms of those last two values. With regards to the experience aspect itself, I would say that's something that I was actually able to realize nearly almost a decade ago. Because the realization that I made, and of course, guys, it's going to be different for every single person out there. Schooling, it can still teach you, don't get me wrong. I'll still apply some of the things that I had learned from my schooling into the business right now, but that's only like 20% of everything. The other 80% has been based off of simply just experience, even mentorship to a certain degree, or just having a strong circle of friends that are there to support you. And if you're if you're in a tough spot and you don't really know how to go about things, you can ask those people within your circle and be like, hey, I was really struggling with this is how I'm planning to approach it. What would you suggest? So that was something that I kind of realized the importance of a few years back. But in terms of those last two, again, just to reiterate, were more of innate things that can be developed. It will take a lot of work, but it's something that can be developed as well.
So now you have an established enterprise. You guys have a number of clients that you're working with. You've got a global network of a team that's supporting you in your mission in helping to service the clients that you guys have on the books. As you continue to scale and scour for new talent, which you said was extremely important. One of the interesting things that I heard you say was it wasn't just important that you hired people who could do the job, but that they were superstars from what I recall you using your own words. Um, when you're talking about superstars and people that you're willing to now hire onto, as the captain of your ship, and being very particular about the people that you want to bring on, what are some of those qualities that you are looking for as a leader?
Great question. And I will correct you on that first part. Rather than it being my ship, or rather than it being my business, it's Easy Edits' business. It's Easy Edits' team. So we have that very within our company, we make it very clear to everybody within the team, positions are just there for organizational purposes. It's just to kind of understand, okay, who should I reach out for this? Who should I reach out for that? But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your position is or what your title is. This is your business too. This is your organization as well. And that actually ties into one of the traits that we're looking for is, do you care about this organization as much as the rest of the team does? A few of those other traits that we look for is simply, and I don't want to go into it too much. Of course, if you guys want me to, then I'm more than happy to. But a few of the values that we look for is unity, efficiency, Kaizen, anti-fragile resistance, optimism, and then standing by your word and standing by your values. If you're able to do that, you automatically qualify as a superstar. And now it's just more or less, let's look into your skill set. Let's see how competent you are at your specific skill. So we're always kind of filtering out for values first before we go into skills. Always.
Interesting. So it almost sounds like what you're saying is not while the hard skills are important to do the job, it's the values and the character of the person that you're looking to hire that you guys really focus on first.
Always. Always.
And why is that? I mean, has there been any experiences that you've dealt with that have led you to take this approach instead?
Maybe to a certain degree, but I feel like the main factor or the main proponent of it is simply because I feel that me personally, along with the rest of our team as well, values are just something that's really important to us. Your personal values can really translate, and it actually does translate a lot into what you do, whether it be in your professional life or whether it be in your personal life. And by us kind of gauging what your values are and whether or not they align with us or not, that really gives us an indication as to whether or not being on this team is something that is for you, so to speak. And of course, there have been some experiences in the past that have solidified our filtering of values first, but I think those are a few many different types of stories that I can kind of go by. But one of the things that I guess I will share with the attendees for today, we've had many interviews in the past where ego was a gigantic problem. Gigantic problem. There's been a few Z editors that we have tried to hire in the past. And usually one of the things that we try to ask for is to conduct a demo project for us. Of course, you would have people who have worked for TV channels, they've worked for studios, they've worked for high profile people. So once they end up submitting a demo project for something that is more on the content creation space, something completely different, we'll end up conducting a next interview and kind of dissect that demo that they've just done. And you would be surprised with how many people took it to offense rather than actually take it as constructive criticism. And it kind of just ties in with that ego of, oh, I've done this work before, I've done that work before. How could you guys say that this isn't good? Or, oh, this is what I learned back in school, so it means that this is the way that I'm doing it, this is the way that's right. And yeah, after seeing those multiple similar types of interactions where ego really started to show up, that's when it truly solidifies that values are the really important thing. Because one of our values, as I kind of alluded to before, was something called Kaizen, which is a Japanese business term that really focuses on daily incremental improvements. So at the end of the day, are you making sure that you're reflecting on how your day was and you're asking yourself, how can I be 1% better on a daily basis? But hey, if you're telling me that you're a master at your craft and you're telling me the way that you're doing it is right, is there really any room for improvement at all? So that's why we kind of try to focus more on the value side of things first, make sure everything is aligned there, and then we'll try to focus more on the skill set side afterwards.
Thank you, Tamer. I think this has been a pretty interesting and informative session. We've tried to dig in and get a good understanding of Easy Edits, the digital media space, your involvement in it. I want to now, at this point, open up the floor for questions from our attendees. So I'll just go ahead and open up the floor. You can raise your hand or go ahead and jump off mic for any questions that you might have. Let's not be shy. There's no silly questions. Brilliant. Fazia, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear me clearly. My question, first of all, I want to say thank you. It was such a brief explanation of everything that you said. My question would be, what is your view in financial literacy for entrepreneurs, beginner entrepreneurs, or a person who wants to start an own business? What do you think is important to know more about financial literacy? And I want you to define the financial literacy from your point of view and the benefits
Fazia,
of knowing that.
Fazia, if I can just stop you there. Your connection is not too great, so the question is having a hard time coming through. Do you want to drop your question in the chat, and then I'll have Tamer go ahead and answer it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, go ahead and drop it in the chat, and then we'll take it up. I see Abdullah has raised his hand as well. So Abdullah, if you want to go ahead.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello,
Good evening, everyone.
go ahead.
Thank you, our host, for today, and a very warm welcome to our guest speaker. I'm Abdullah Ismail Abdullah, speaking from Nigeria. I really want to thank the guest for bringing this elaborate and insightful knowledge, to us, young people across Africa. And my suggestion is not a question. If slides can be dropped for us, to step down this program to our fellow youth in Nigeria, and maybe some other people might be interested as well, because our economy of the 21st century is almost digitally driven, or digital economy. I think this kind of programs can help us in harnessing some of our opportunities that can really be helpful to our young people. Yeah. Thank you, and have a beautiful night. Bye-bye.
Understood. Abdullah, I feel like give me a chat and I think we can have a pretty solid discussion. I think I understand a majority of what your suggestion is, but let's chat offline, because I feel like we can really exchange some value with each other.
Awesome. Thank you for the question, Abdullah. I guess we'll Fazia just had dropped her question in the chat. Her question is, what's financial literacy and the benefits for financial literacy for a bigger entrepreneur?
Thank you, Fozea, for the question. So what is financial literacy? In simple terms, it's just kind of understanding money, understanding how money is kind of made, how it can be spent, strategic ways on how it can be spent, and so on and so forth. If we're looking more on a simple vibe, then let's just say you end up getting your paycheck. How are you going to split up this paycheck in a way that's going to make sense for you in the short term, in the medium term, and the long term? And that's kind of what financial literacy is all about. More of an umbrella term per se, but of course it can be split up into credit, it can be split up into savings, investments, all that type of stuff. And when it comes down to the biggest benefits of financial literacy for a bigger entrepreneur, is simply the exact same as it would be for anybody else. whenever you end up getting that paycheck, you need to understand how are you going to split that up so that it makes sense for the organization on a short, medium, and long term. So financial literacy is something that's extremely important. If it's something that you're able to get out of the way in the very beginning, it makes your life a lot easier in the future as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Fawzi. I hope that answers your question. Feel free to drop another one in the chat if it doesn't, if you need him to elaborate. In the meantime, we'll move on to Labiza Alemu, and then we'll do Gaela and Pundu right after.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yep.
hear you.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank all the audience and the distinguished guest. It was a very great session for us about the digital seminar or the digital. The topic was interesting, so I am going to ask you about. My question is that, as you know, especially in Africa, the digital media used for most of the time used for the negative, or it has a negative impact beyond the benefit, or used as a business platform. So how could we utilize it as a tool to be productive, or to become sorry. If you interest, if you have somehow, if you understand my question for somehow, you can answer. Especially the war, most of the war is been advertised with social media, as you know. But how could we how could we use this platform to the good benefit? Thank you.
So Lubiza, just to reconfirm that I understood the question right, is how can you leverage digital media in a way that's going to be beneficial? Or what if you could rephrase that, that'd be awesome.
Okay, it's okay. Go on. It's that's my question.
Yeah, I think
Almost
what he's saying is, Labiza, if I understand, digital media is sometimes used to perpetuate negativity on the content, rather than for things that are productive. So how can Africans better take advantage of the digital media space for beneficial purposes? Is that right?
Yeah, it's right. That's my question.
Got it. Thank you, Labiza, for the question. Thank you, Jonathan, for that clarification as well. Labiza, I feel like it really just comes down with the intention at the end of the day, right? Of course, to every force, there's an equal and opposite force. So when you do have that negativity that could be portraying within the media, well, hey, that just means that you gotta clap back with positive media and positive energy, and you want to try to overtake that with positivity. You want to make sure that the intent, of course, is there, where the end goal is establishing more peace, establishing more unity, and establishing more love. And it's just kind of overpowering it, because I understand how, when it comes down to the negative impacts of media, I do understand where you're coming from. But if we're able to push back in a positive force, then I feel like that's really the ultimate thing that matters. I don't know if that answers your question, though.
Yeah, if I can even add to that, digital media is just a tool. Digital media in and of itself is not good or bad. What's good or bad is what we do with it. So people who want to use digital media for negative purposes or to perpetuate a destructive agenda are going to use media to do that. But we also have the same power, having this access and these tools at our hands, and the information and knowledge that Tamer is giving us today also have the power to counter that with our own program that we might want to put on, or our own message that we want to highlight and spread to the masses. Because if people are getting all this negativity, they're going to be searching for positivity somewhere. They're going to want it. They're going to be overwhelmed. So if as a creator who has ideas, or who has a message that you want to spread, or content, or production that you want to share, you can use that same tool, but for positive force, right? So it's all about what we do with it. I think. Labiza, I hope
For
that
interference, but you can unmute. You can mute them. You can mute.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Gaela, if you want to go ahead.
Yes. So hello everyone. I just wanted to ask a question. So for a young leader, for a young African as I am, I wanted to ask if you have any daily habits you can put in place if you want to grow our values and be a certain values, or if you want just to be someone.
Gaela, if I can just interrupt, your mic is a little muffled. You started off really good, but then your mic got muffled a little bit.
Okay.
Yes, now you're.
Okay, I wanted to ask if you have some daily habits you can put in place if you want to be a leader, or if you want to be someone with values and want to develop ourselves and our community. I don't know if.
Got it. So Gael, basically you're asking for what are some of the habits that one can develop in the beginning to kind of set them up for the future. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Great question. I feel like when it comes down to like the starter habits that you can start developing at first, I feel like it's going to vary for everybody. And it really will depend on where your priorities kind of stand. I guess the perfect example, and I can relay this to myself, and then from there you can kind of start to identify what are your priorities and where should you start. I had a very, very big problem with one of the habits that I would always eat fast food. Even if there was food at home, there was something that I can cook, I always resorted to the fast food. That was a bad habit that I needed to fix up. So for me, that was very important because number one, if you don't have health, you don't have anything else. Number two, you're wasting your resources effectively. And number three, it's just as simple as that. I have food at home. Why am I ordering fast food? To me, that was one of my biggest priorities. So I had to establish myself the good habits to fix that. Whether that had to be through every Sunday, I had to meal prep so that the rest of the week, my meals were prepared and ready to go, which didn't have me doing the fast food stuff. So it's really going to depend what, if anything, my suggestion to you, Gaela, and anybody else who kind of had that same question, is make an inventory of your every single day life. For an entire week, an entire 2 weeks, literally have yourself a notepad, something like this, where you can literally write, okay, from 9 a.m. to 9:15 a.m., I ended up doing this. 9:15 to 9:30, I ended up doing this. Take a log of the stuff that you do on a daily basis for 1 to 2 weeks, analyze that once you're complete, and then make that decision yourself and really identify what are the things that I need to focus my priorities for, and how do I build good habits around that. I would even go as far as saying is something called the batching method of habits. So if there are multiple habits that can kind of intertwine with each other, it'll actually make your life a lot easier. Again, and then I'll close up the answer from here. Personally, for me, there are 3 habits that I will compile together. Working out at the gym in terms of resistance training, cardio, and then followed by a cold shower. These are three things, three different habits, but I compile them all into one. So first, resistance, cardio, and then right as soon as I get home, cold shower. So effectively, I've took three habits and turned them into one. So those would be my two pieces, or my 2 cents, in terms of how you can get started on identifying what habits you need to form first and how to kind of go about it.
Thank you.
Admire, Andrew, if you want to go next.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, my question to Tema is you talked about sacrifices. And I know that wherever there's sacrifices, there's also complications. So my question is, did you ever find yourself in that situation where you felt like you wanted to give up? And if yes, what motivated you to keep fighting on?
I love that question. Thank you, Admira. I would say there have been countless times where you feel like you want to give up. And I think the most important thing, Admira, is to remind yourself as to why you and the rest of the team have even started this in the first place. And remind yourself of the end goal and remind yourself of the destination as much as possible to kind of get yourself back into it. One of the things that personally helps me is there's this picture. I'm sure that some of you guys have seen it before because it's just that cliche, but there's a side by side of two people that are digging for diamonds underground. The first person is somebody who had decided to give up for digging, and they decided to turn around and quit. They decided to leave and they're like, I'm done. I'm absolutely done with doing this. Whereas the other person, on the other hand, decided to keep going. They decided to keep digging, and they were very close to the treasure. I end up remembering that exact same image anytime that I have those moments of, oh my goodness, like I need to quit. And it's usually, Admira, believe it or not, it's in those exact moments where if you're able to make it through and if you're able to push, you're going to find yourself, you or your team or all of you guys, you're going to find yourself from here to here. But it all depends on, are you able to just push through this one time so that you can make that exponential jump? And you just need to remind yourself, why did you start? Why is this important to you? And simply that. I hope that answers your question, Amira.
Yeah, I'm answered. Thank you.
So we have one last question from Tsitsi. She asks, approximately how much, and I'm assuming she means by money, how much does one need to start digital media? And how do you deal with losses, if there are any?
Got it. Thank you, Tsitsi, for the question. Believe it or not, and this doesn't just apply to digital media, it applies to a majority of industries and businesses out there. Zero. You ultimately do not need any capital to start any business of any sort. You're going to find that hard to believe, but especially if it's a skill that you already know inside and out, you can do it yourself in the beginning. And from there, once you start raising capital with each and every single time that you give a service or a product or whatever the case is, you end up putting that in the reserve. And then you think about that next step. Okay, well, do I need to hire a new person or a new team member? And then you take that next step. But ultimately, you don't really need any capital to start. In terms of how to deal with losses, if there are any, there's always going to be losses. Whether you're starting a business or you start hiring your team members, you need to expect to be in the financial negatives for at least 2 years, maybe even up to 4 years. So you got to get used to seeing negatives on your financial statements for a very long time before you can even start seeing positives. and you got to be comfortable with that.
Okay, I think
Thank
that
you so much. I'm answered.
brilliant. So I think that about wraps up our session. Thank you, Tamer, for joining us today and sharing your insight and knowledge about your industry and space and answering all the questions. If anyone has any questions or they want to reach you, where can they find you?
I feel like the best way to find me is through LinkedIn, Tamer Aziz. You can simply just type up my name, and just by the headlines, you'll be able to tell that it is me. But with that being said, Jonathan, and to all of the attendees for today, you've all been very lovely. I love all of the questions that you guys have asked, and I really appreciate you guys for being here as well and expressing that interest into learning about the opportunities within digital media as well.
So Tamer, is it yeah, AZ? Oh, Fazia found it actually. I think she found it, yeah. AZ. Tamer, I always thought there was a double Z in your name.
I just got to keep people on their toes, you know, throw in an extra Z, throw in an extra I sometimes, but the first name's always kind of the same.
That's funny. That's brilliant. Okay. All right, Fazia, thank you for sharing that link. She found your LinkedIn. So if anyone has any questions or they want to reach out or connect with Tamer, you can go ahead and reach out to him. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us.